How's it going, everybody? Ted purchased Bold Lens Photography, and today we are going to look at Lightroom 7.2 versus Capture 1 Pro 11, and I got both of them loaded up. We're going to be going through these programs side by side so you could really see which one is the best for you. But before we get too much further into this, I just want to say, thanks for the people out there that have been talking to me and support me. And I know this channel's still pretty new, but if you guys really want to help it out to where I can get more content out there, just subscribe, get the word out. I really appreciate everybody that's helped me out with this so far. And I'm going to try, and I'm trying to keep a schedule here. I'm going to try to get at least one video a week, but sometimes I just get slammed with work and I can't. But so far I've been able to do at least once a week, so I want to keep trying to get those to you on a regular schedule like that. So if you're wondering when the next video is, I'll try and get it within a week, or at least I'll say in social media like, hey, I couldn't get a video up this week, I had to shoot like 20 houses. So anyways, without further delay, let's go ahead and get into it. So actually, before we really start looking at the programs here, probably one of the biggest differences between these two programs is the prices and the package and what you're getting with that. So let's go ahead and dive into that real quick, because that's going to be the deciding factor for a lot of you guys, especially with Adobe only doing monthly subscription now, and we'll go into that. So let me go ahead and pop this up in the browser so I can show you guys. Okay guys, let's go ahead and take a look at the prices here real quick. So for Adobe, one thing about the Adobe package is that if you're really hardcore into video too, then and graphic design and all these other things, then you can always go with this $50 a month, which seems like a lot, but that's a ton of high-level programs that are always constantly updated. I don't use that, and I'm actually, the only thing that I've ever used is this $9.99 a month plan. What this is going to get you is it gets you 20 gigs of online storage, which is nothing. It's probably enough to store all your JPEGs for your first couple years of shooting, and then you wouldn't have any room after that, but at least you get a little bit. But there's a million free ones that give you tons of space to store photos out there, so that's not really a huge deal. What you can do though is, if you want, you could pay an extra $10 a month, and that gives you a terabyte, which isn't necessarily a crazy good deal on storage. But one reason to go with that is that the reason why they call it CC is because it's a cloud. It can sync all your stuff, not just your finished photos, but your RAWs as well. You could work on a RAW on your laptop and then go on your phone and play with it later. I have zero use to do that. I just throw them on my computer, edit them, and then I'm done. So I'm not looking to edit them on multiple devices, but it is kind of cool. There's a lot of neat little tricks to be able to quickly move your photos around, but then you're always kind of, you got to tied up. You got to have some kind of internet or Wi-Fi to really be moving these around, I guess, unless you had an unlimited plan. Then they also have this plan, Lightroom Cc. So Lightroom Cc, just to let you guys know, if you didn't check when they made 7.0, this isn't regular Lightroom. This is more like the mobile app. So it's very basic. Even though Lightroom's already really basic compared to Photoshop, this is even more basic. I never found it that useful. On my mobile devices it's cool, but as far as using it on the computer, just the regular Lightroom works so much better, especially after the 7.2 patch. Now it really works a lot better because the performance is fantastic on it. So I think most people will just probably be getting this photography plan. The big advantage with going with Lightroom on price is that you're also getting Photoshop CC. So if you want like a more intense program, then you already have that. If you go with Capture 1, then you're gonna have to buy an extra program. What I ended up buying was actually Affinity Photo, which I really like, and that's great. And just to tell you guys a little bit about the difference between Affinity Photo and Photoshop, I'm not crazy into doing these things that much. There's just the stuff that I know how to do. That's what I do. I don't do composites or anything like that. So, and I'm not into creating graphic designs or anything like that either. But just from my experience, Affinity really tried to attract people over by making the interface almost just like Photoshop. So it's a fantastic replacement if you go with Capture One. If you use the Lightroom Photoshop, you can Capture One. Affinity Photo, only $50, and they say that's a lifetime. Like, you don't have to pay to upgrade, which if that's actually true and they keep updating it, then that's an insane deal right now. Especially considering how good it is. It has a lot of nice little tools that just aren't in Photoshop, and some things seem to just work way better and smoother, and then some things just, they don't work better at all. It's really just a back and forth with them. Same with Lightroom and Capture One. That's one thing you're going to learn as we get further into this video, is that they're really, it's real apples and oranges. It was a very tough decision for me to decide which one to go with, and I'll be telling you which one that I'm going to be using as my primary editor here at the end of the video. But let's go ahead and pop into the Capture One prices, because this is where things get a little weird. One of the biggest complaints is that, you know, if you want the latest Adobe, 7.2, you can't get that by getting a standalone version. You have to get the $10 a month, and that annoys a lot of people. So I've heard people say, "Oh, I'm going with Capture One because then I don't have to pay $10 a month." Well, hold on to that thought for a second, because you're not going to like this too much. Capture One Pro for the program itself is $300. Unless you have a Sony, then it's only $80. So it's almost a no-brainer. If you have Sony, I'll probably just get Capture One, because it's really good. It can do pretty much everything Lightroom can. It can do a lot of things that it can't. And it's such a nice discount. But you might think, well, then you just pay it once and you're done. Well, that's not necessarily true, because this product, they update it almost every year. It gets a big major. That's why it's on 11. It used to be 10, 9, 8, all the way down to 1. So, and if you look at their schedule of release, it's not exactly once a year, but it's pretty close. It maybe give or take a couple months on average, but it's about there. And as you can see here for the Sony, $70. So that's pretty cheap. If you have to pay $70 a year to always upgrade and have the latest one, you're still saving a lot of money just going with this and going with Affinity than you are going with Lightroom. And it's just as good, if not better, in a lot of ways. Definitely has a few things missing that Lightroom has, and we'll get into that. But if you go with the regular, like if you don't have a Sony camera, you just got a regular, Nikon, Canon, anything else besides Sony. And even if you have a Sony, I think you still have to, I think this will only work on your Sony camera. So if you got like a bunch of Sony cameras, but you decide to get them a little Olympus for travel, or you got a whatever camera for any reason, then I think you'd have to go and buy the regular version just to be able to use that camera as well. So keep that in mind if you're going to get the Sony. I'm not 100% sure on that. You could look into it, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. I don't know, because I don't own a Sony camera, so I didn't get that one. So, and if you look at this, about $120, and what's weird, it's the same price whether you're in Europe or the United States. So if you're in Europe, I don't know what the Creative Cloud is, but this obviously, it's a lot more, because I believe the euro is worth more than the US dollar. So that could turn off, people overseas from where I'm at from getting on there and downloading Capture One. But, so if you are updating every month, it almost equals out to right around $10 a month. So not only are you paying $10 a month, but then you also got to pay $300 for the program itself. Then if you want a replacement for Photoshop, then you got to pay an extra $50 a month for Affinity. And while that's an insane deal, who knows if that Affinity if it's really going to be $50 forever. I don't know, or if it even stays around long enough at such a low price point, if they can make money to keep staying competitive with Photoshop. So it's something to keep in mind. There's also one other thing, and we'll kind of get into the programs, but one of the major differences is that you have a library module in Lightroom. In Capture One, you have no such thing. And so what you can do is, you load your one-to-one previews, or you can do a sidecar, which is kind of like how Photo Mechanic works. Well, they don't have anything like that in Capture One, so you need another program. The good news is, at least for PC, I found this program, and I'll do a video on this some other time. It's called Keystone, and it basically lets me go through. You can see how quick I can actually go through my photos here and zoom in and get sharpness. It's just like Photo Mechanic. It lets you quickly sort your photos, just like if you loaded in sidecar photos in the library on Lightroom, but it's one more program. It's not available for Mac, so I'm not sure of a good free one for Mac that's at least as good as this or better. But yeah, it's just one more thing that you're going to have to take into consideration when you're getting this, is that you might have to get just even another product. And another thing too, and I hate to keep piling this on, is with Lightroom, you can also do panoramics and HDRs right in there. You don't have to have a second program. Now you could do those, you can't do them in Capture One, but if you had Affinity, you could do those in there. And there's also plenty of different free programs to be able to do that. So that's just one of the things you're gonna have to keep in mind. So you really get a lot with the Lightroom and Photoshop. You can pretty much do everything. With the Capture One, to really do everything, you're gonna have to get a few more programs. So yeah, I could see how that could turn people off, but it's still a really good piece of software. And let's go ahead and just dive into that really quick. So just starting off, one of the biggest differences between them is you actually do got a little library toolbar here. It's not necessarily a module like you have in Lightroom. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. And but you got filters here. Filters pretty much works exactly like Lightroom does. No difference there. But the big difference is that with Lightroom, you have to load a catalog. And personally, I hate catalogs. When stuff gets moved around, the catalog always gets messed up. I find myself, and just to mess with them in Lightroom has always been a pain for me. I hate catalogs. I like to just be able to put things in files where I want them and be able to scroll through them, and Capture One lets me do that. I don't have to do catalogs. If I want to, I can, but you always have the option. I could just go, boom, switch. This is just a file that's in my on my hard drive right now, and I can just switch from them easily. It's really nice. I'd prefer that. You might prefer catalogs. If that's the case, then neither one's really going to be a real big difference from each other, if that's the case. Okay guys, let's go ahead and start going through the tools here. So okay, we have our library and our clipboard. We pretty much already went over those. The clipboard, that just lets you copy and paste. Pretty much the same thing as Lightroom. It's just moved on a dedicated tool versus a pop-up. Go down to lens correction. One nice touch that they did on Capture One is that they actually have this sharpness fall off. And what that does is that it actually just, a lot of lenses have dull corners. It sharpens them up, and the sharpening on Capture One Pro is excellent. I find it to be a little bit better than Lightroom for sure. Seems to do a really good job without making it look too grainy. You have a rotating tool here, and just one huge advantage for me of Capture One. Anybody who does architectural photography will love this tool. And you can see I have a guide here, and it moves back and forth. This one goes up and down, and I could put it exactly where I want. So if I'm trying to get my vertical straight, I could move this, right to where one of these balcony posts are at, and I don't know what the heck you call them, rails, where the rail is. And you know, I could straighten that out really easy. And with Lightroom, when you go to straighten out something like that, you put it on your crop overlay tool, and then you can straighten. This grid pops out, but it's not a bright blue. It's not necessarily easy to see, and I can't zoom in while using it. This one, I could go zoom in, and then I could still just use my rotation tool to get this absolutely perfectly lined up, which would be about right there. So for my architectural photography, this is actually one of the biggest reasons why I like Capture One Pro 11. Then you have Keystone, which they have that in Lightroom. Fringing correction. This seems to do a better job of dealing with chromatic aberrations automatically just by hitting this button right here. But also my current lens lineup that I'm using is all pretty good with dealing with them. So both do really good. This one just seems like I never have to worry about it. With Lightroom, this has no chromatic aberrations even with that turned off right now. But with Lightroom, I usually have to double check and make sure it got them all, because sometimes it doesn't, and then I have to go in and adjust them manually. I've never had to do that with Capture One. Looking at the exposure tools, it's pretty much the same. You have highlights, the bars are kind of reversed, shadows, you know, everything pretty much works the same. The only difference is that Capture One Pro has a little bit different of a feel on it, and it feels like it's a little bit more intelligent sliders. Like, it seems to do a better job of getting everything even, but it's a trade-off because it kind of makes you give up a little bit of control. You'd have to really play with each to find out which one you like. There's just sometimes with certain photos, I kind of like the control I'm getting with Lightroom better, and sometimes with certain photos, Capture One seems better to me. I don't know, but for the most part, there's not that big of a difference when it comes to your exposure controls. Moving on to colors, it's a lot of the same stuff. One of the biggest advantages of Capture One Pro for me is that when I am using a brush, let me pull up a brush here really quick. I can paint this, and it actually lets me select just that color, and I could adjust my selection here. And let's say I want to turn saturation down. Now that area, I got rid of the saturation, but I only got rid of the green. All the blue is still there from the sky behind it. This is extremely useful for architecture, getting rid of color cast and things like that. And in general, when you use the brush in Capture One Pro, you can adjust anything. In Lightroom, when you go use the brush, you're actually fairly limited on what you can do. Looking at the gradient filter here. Oh, that's right, we were looking at colors. Let's go back to colors, sorry. That was just, I guess that kind of was color related there. But it's pretty much the same stuff here. You got white bounce, that's gonna work pretty much the same. This is kind of like your split toning, but it does it 3 ways, so it's kind of cool. It's not a big deal. Black and white's basically the same between them. And then you have your color tool, and this one's, I definitely give the advantage to Capture One, but it's not a huge deal. I need to go back to layers. This is another difference, is that you actually have your layers laid out for you, whereas with Lightroom, you don't. You put in a brush. Let's say we put a brush in there, and then you're done. Let's click done. You're adjusting stuff later. You want to adjust the brush. The only way to see the layers is to hover over the dots. This one has the layers, and you can do things like reduce the opacity. It seems to work a little bit better as far as giving you more control over your brushes, but it's a little bit more tedious, where I feel like Lightroom, I could just quickly go from brush to brush. Capture One, I can't quickly do that, but because I have to keep creating new layers every time. So create a new layer, hit B for brush, paint it in. Oh, I gotta hit mask every time, which is annoying. So I wish that was just a toggle like with Lightroom. You brush it and then you can just hit that and it stays in there. And it seems a little bit just smoother with Lightroom. This seems a little bit more tedious. Not a big deal. You get a lot more control. You can do a lot more with that. But let's go ahead and get back to this. I keep getting distracted. Let me get the layers again. Turn that on background. Go back to color editor. Now this is just real similar to your HSL panel on Lightroom. Just the saturation of your various colors. On Capture One you could do that, but it's a little bit more customizable because you could change where those colors begin and end, I guess. So I could make it to where I'm adjusting. Let me move this over. Oops. I could make it to where I'm doing something like this and I'm adjusting pretty much all my greens and my yellows. So not a huge difference between the two, just a little tiny bit more flexibility with Capture One. As we go through to the details tabs here, let's pull up layers. Yeah, just the sharpening and noise reduction, it's just different between them. I feel the sharpening in Capture One Pro 11, like I said earlier, is superior to Lightroom. It seems to sharpen up the pictures better with less grain. As far as the noise reduction goes, it seems like it doesn't blur or get rid of the noise reduction as much, but it doesn't get rid of as much detail. So they end up looking noisier, but they look a little cleaner. It's just feels like a weak bar, and that's one of the differences between these. Some of the bars or some of your sliders just feel weak on Capture One, and some feel too strong. Like, no way I'd ever push this one that far, and this one you wish it was 3 times as long. And it's the same thing with Lightroom. Just sometimes on certain photos, certain sliders just seem like you don't have enough to go off of. Oh yeah, that's a big thing that is kind of annoying, is this lightness one. It does almost nothing versus Lightroom, and this is just going to increase and decrease the exposure of that color. If you go into Lightroom, it seems like it does that much more. You have way more flexibility on that. A little annoying, not a big deal. But yeah, then, oh yeah, as far as spot removal goes, that's it in Capture One Pro. It's a little weird because you have this spot removal tool, and this will work pretty much just to get rid of, let's see if I can find anything to get rid of. Let's say we want to get rid of this little piece right here. Should just get rid of that just fine. But then what's weird is that you also have your brushes, just that you use to brush like normal. You can also use those to get rid of spots, and it's just more of a healing tool for bigger stuff versus Lightroom, where that's all in pretty much just one tool called the spot removal tool. Functionally, it pretty much works the same with either of them. I haven't really noticed a huge difference. They both pretty much work good. They'll do just fine. And that's just, most of these tools there just really isn't a big difference between them. It's just some of the little things. This has these processing recipes, so it's really super customizable on the back end. When you go to export, you have all these different recipes that can choose the folder, the file type. I haven't got into that stuff. I just use I just export in JPEG, which is really easy, just like Lightroom. And this is one thing that's really nice. You see, now I'm back. I have my white bounce and my rotation and flip and my exposure. And you might be thinking, well, that's kind of crazy. Why is there 2 tabs? And that's because this is just a custom tab that I made that's my most used settings. And you could do that as many times as you want. These tools you could actually detach and put them anywhere. I actually have dual screens, so this is in single screen mode for purposes of making this video, but I can have all my tools on a whole nother screen. Now recently I switched back to single screen because that was actually causing me performance issues. So, and with Lightroom you can't do that. You're pretty much just stuck where they're at. So that's definitely a big advantage to Capture One Pro. It is much more customizable than Lightroom is, but also sometimes it can just, like going through the menus here, this looks like just as complex as Photoshop, and it's really not that complex of a program because it's so customizable and there's so much going on. It's overly complex. It gives you the option to do things that I don't know why anybody would ever want to mess with, but it's incredibly customizable, but that might be intimidating for new users. This is a lot simpler, a lot easier to learn. As far as even just learning, if you go look at instructional videos, there's going to be way more stuff showing you how to use Capture One and Lightroom than there is Affinity and Photoshop, but there's still plenty of support for those. But maybe you don't like those when everybody, I mean, there's just millions of people out there doing videos for Lightroom and Photoshop. You have a lot more support, especially, I'm not a big fan of presets, but if you are getting presets, getting actions, all these plugins, a lot more of those work with Lightroom versus Capture One. As far as using this with other programs, bringing stuff in and out, it just doesn't really work that good in my experience. When Lightroom works a lot better because most programs made these days come with a Lightroom plugin. Capture One, almost nothing comes with a Capture One plugin. So there's some things you could do like edit in other programs, and for the most part, if it's one image and you're just doing that, that's fine. I found out that, you know, I couldn't, at least I haven't figured out yet how to put them all in a stack and, you know, do something like open up my photos in Affinity Photo as a stack or open up in another program. You know, it's just like I have one program that if I take a bunch of photos and I put it in there, it just opens up that program like 20 times, and it just kept opening it up and opening it up. Lightroom has a lot more support with that, so that's one of the biggest advantages to going with Adobe, is that they're just a big dog. So there's a lot of support from other companies, from YouTubers making instructional videos. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the gradient filters and just some of those other filters that we went over. I just wanted to show you a couple things with that. For one, the graduated filter on Adobe is just much better. You could move it around. On Capture One Pro, let me pull it up here. Let me do one real quick. Seems like, oh, it's really about the same, but look what happens when I move it around. It doesn't keep going, and if I make it's stupid. Why did they do it like this? Why not do it like how Adobe has it, where I could move it up and down? You pretty much just have to redraw it, which takes just a second, but I mean, look at this. You know, why would anybody ever want to do that? Yeah, it's goofy. And if you crop it, if you crop this image down, then it'll look like it's not doing it. It's just the Lightroom. It's not a big deal, but the graduated filter in Lightroom is much better. I don't use it a whole lot, but it also has this radio filter. You can go like this, and it's only going to affect what's inside or outside that filter. This is something that Capture One just simply doesn't have. All you have is the graduated and the brush. And essentially the brush pretty much works exactly the same on both programs. Haven't really noticed a difference. This has a red eye correction where Capture One actually doesn't. So Capture One, you just have to do it by hand with, you know, a little bit of clone stamping action. But yeah, as you can see, it's really apples and oranges as far as the interface and as far as the tools go. Lightroom has some nice things in it. Capture One has some nice things. Whichever one you feel like you would benefit the most from, that should be what you're going to go with. As far as performance, that's the big one, because Lightroom And this is why I got Capture One in the first place and dumped Lightroom, is that the Lightroom Performance was abysmal, and I upgraded my machine. I bought a new, let me just tell you what I'm running here really quick. That way you guys know. I have a electronics notebook that has a 7700 Intel i7 HQ processor, 3.8 gigahertz, turbo boosted, 16 gigs of 2400 megahertz DDR4 RAM, 1050 Ti, and 256 gig M.2. So not the most insane system in the world, but I think it's pretty good. And it's a lot better than what I had before this, which was so old it was embarrassing. And I thought that would really make a difference, and it did a little bit, but Lightroom was still slowing down for me, especially if I had a lot of stuff going on at once, especially if I had all my sliders pushed around and I had a bunch of brush adjustments and spot removals. That's what they fixed on this, was they made it to where if you have a bunch of things stacked up, because essentially what these do is they don't change your file, they're just making adjustments to a preview, but every time you do something and it wants to update and show you that, it has to pretty much redraw it. And that's why once these get stacked up, even after this fix that they did, which helped out a lot, but it didn't fix it because I don't think you can fix it with the way these programs are set up. But even Capture One, if you start stacking up, if you adjust every single slider and you put a million brushes and a million spot removals, it will slow down too, even on this machine, even without using dual screens or any of that stuff. But Lightroom used to be way worse at it than Capture One Pro was. And did this patch fix it? Well, the shorter answer is yes, it pretty much fixed it. Lightroom runs like butter, just like Capture One. They both run beautifully on this computer. You can see this was a $1,300 notebook, so you could build a computer like this for less than $1,000 fairly easily. This isn't that insane of a system at all, but it's pretty solid. It's not bad. One of the biggest differences between the performances, it's going to be a big plus for Lightroom here, is when you zoom in and zoom out, you can see here that it doesn't take any time to load. Now what it does is it seems like it takes a little bit more time the first time you do it, but Capture One, let me switch to the hand here. Capture One, pretty much every time I zoom in, it's going to take a second to load, even where I was just zoomed in at. You can see there it just takes a little bit of time. When I go to Lightroom, it's instant, which is just sweet, but it takes a little bit at first. So if you're just going through and trying to see what's sharp and what's not, and while being in a develop module, for some reason you didn't want to do that in library with your sidecars, then this seems like it's a little bit slower. But once you zoom in once, it's better. Let me actually see. Let's zoom in on this one. Yeah, you can see it takes maybe just a couple milliseconds longer to load up, but then once it loads up once, you can zoom around. Let's see if it does it if I go back here. So it's taken a second for it to load up. You can see there it took a couple seconds that time around. But versus this, where, you know, if I want to go check sharpness, it seems like it does it a little bit quicker, but that it does it every time. So that's one of your biggest speed differences. As far as exporting, these both, importing and exporting, all that, they really seem like the performance is right there with either of them. And just as far as performance goes, it's basically neck and neck now, with maybe giving that small advantage to Lightroom with the zoom in. But yeah, they finally fixed it. Before 7.2, when I upgraded to that computer, and this is when 7.0 came out, which was another speed upgrade, it was, if I just had all my sliders, not even a bunch of brushes or anything on the same computer, if I had a bunch of those stacked up and then I tried to adjust something like my white balance, it would be so laggy, it was hard to adjust. That's all fixed now. So performance wise, just don't even worry about it. Just pick which one that you like, that has the best features for you, that has the best price plan. Maybe you like Photoshop a little bit better. That's what I would go off of when picking between these two. As far as all the rest of the features go, I think that's basically it. I think I pretty much covered everything major that needs to be covered on this. So now you guys might be asking, what did I pick and why? I'm actually, after this video, going to get rid of Lightroom, and I'm going to get rid of Photoshop and cancel my CC subscription, and I'm going to be sticking with Capture One Pro. Now there's a few reasons for that. One, like a dummy, I went out and bought Capture One Pro. If I didn't do that, I might even stick with Lightroom, but I already bought it, so I don't want to say, I just paid $300 for this not that long ago, and I don't want to be paying $10 a month for something when I got something that's basically just as good for what I need to do. And like I said, I have for the culling, I know this has it built in. I have to use a second program with this. That's not a big deal. I had to buy Infinity. I like Infinity personally better than I like Photoshop, but that's not a big deal either. The main reason is that I bought this. I own both of them. But there are a couple other reasons. For one, I really like just having this little customizable panel that I made here for my architecture, which is a big part of my business. If I need to straighten verticals or something, this works so much better than Lightroom. It's so much easier to get my verticals straight in post if I need to. And just overall, I don't know, just as I've been getting used to it, I just like the feel of it a little bit more. This sounds kind of weird, and maybe there's some way to fix this, but the tools and the sliders are just really small on Lightroom, and I don't like that. I just kind of like the look and feel of this a little bit more. If I did not buy Capture One Pro 11 and I didn't have a Lightroom and I had to pick one for the first time, honestly, it would be a tough choice, but I think I would probably go with Lightroom just because you have more support out there if you want to learn new tricks. You have more support for your other programs that want to plug in, but I don't know, it's really apples and oranges, and it's such a tough call because they're both really good. They both work almost exactly the same. It's just really small things that separate these two. So anyways, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you like it, and I hope this helped you guys make a decision on which raw converter or which raw editing program that you want to go with. And yeah, that's going to be it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, enable notification, and comment down below. If you'd like to support this channel so I can make future content, check out my website, boldlensphotography.com, where I sell fine art prints. You can also donate money at patreon.com/boldlensphotography. And I'll have links below to all my social media accounts. And hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.